right, welcome back to the channel. So Gervonta Davis is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, according to Mike Tyson. This after his win over Mario Barrios. And I gotta tell you, man, that Tank, if that's not true, at the very least, Tank has got to be the most underrated fighter in boxing. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back. So, Gervonta Tank Davis is without a doubt one of the biggest stars in boxing. And although there should be no doubt about it, that doesn't prevent a bunch of people from acting like he doesn't exist. They act like he doesn't exist as far as his star power when they talk about who the biggest stars in boxing are. They also find a way to forget about talking about him when they talk about who actually the best fighters in the sport are. Now, ESPN, I do believe one of these groups have Gervonta Davis listed as like the number 10, tied for number 10 pound-for-pound fighter, best fighter in the world. And I'm agreeing with Mike Tyson. I think that is absolutely ridiculous. Mike Tyson, who was a former heavyweight champion, one of the best heavyweight fighters to ever do it, definitely one of the best to do it in the last 50 years. Said talked about Gervonta Davis after his win over Barrios and said that he believed that this kid was the best guy out there and that he had proved it. Right now, this is coming from Mike Tyson, somebody that has had not just a few criticisms for not supporting other black fighters in the past. For example, never really was very supportive of Floyd Mayweather Jr., wasn't very supportive of Deontay Wilder. Just kind of comes across a lot of times as somebody that is just, because he's such a big major symbol in the sport, or a major fighter in the sport, or personality in the sport is probably the best way to say that. He might have a tendency at times, just to say the most popular thing, to say the thing that isn't going to get him in trouble and isn't going to have a lot of people writing bad articles about him. At least that's the way that I took it, when he refuses to really give Deontay Wilder the credit that Deontay Wilder deserved, for being a heavyweight champion, defending his title 10 times. Didn't really seem as if he was being very supportive of Floyd Mayweather Jr. when Floyd Mayweather Jr. was coming up. But it doesn't seem like he's gonna follow in that same path for Gervonta Davis, because he's saying that Gervonta Davis is one of the best is the best fighter out there. Now, why could that be? Clearly Gervonta Davis is a similar type of fighter as Mike Tyson. Small in height, thick in size, excellent defensive fighter, great shifts from defense to offense. Fights very similar to Mike Tyson in a lot of ways. So I can see why Mike Tyson may, really like Gervonta Davis and be more apt to give him praise than maybe some fighters that don't fight in the same style as he, right? But I do not think that Mike Tyson in this instance is putting anything extra on it, because I wouldn't say, I don't have Gervonta Davis as the #1 pound-for-pound guy on my list. However, his skills clearly put him way above certain people that are on that list. Now, which list are we talking about? We're talking about the lists that are put out there by ESPN, lists that are put out by Ring Magazine, organizations that are most definitely on the payroll. I would say on the take, because I don't think they're necessarily getting bribed, but, well, not bribed in cash, but access to fights, access to hotel rooms, things like that. I wouldn't put it past those guys at all. And just generally speaking, they are boxing writers. So this one, the major organization is called the Boxing Writers Association of America. And I'm pretty sure that everybody that has a vote on an ESPN, other than boxers, anybody that has a vote for ESPN's top 10 pound for pound list or Ring Magazine's list are going to be members of the Boxing Writers Association of America. But those guys are people that, that get their access through the promoters. If they don't have a promoter that is going to be willing to let them talk to a fighter, if they don't get that access from the promoter or from the network, then they're not able to do their job. So it seems to me to be a natural quid pro quo when they happen to vote for the fighters that they are getting access to and being asked to cover by the promoters and by the networks. And as a result, you have just ridiculous omissions of talent on these lists. For example, besides just Gervonta Davis is a huge name in that regard. To have him number 10 underneath guys like Juan Carlos Estrada and Monster Inoue is just ridiculous. And I have a very hard time believing anybody that actually watches the sport of boxing and has seen Juan Carlos Estrada fight and Monster Inoue fight has any in their head honestly believes that they are the same level of skill or talent as Gervonta Davis. That for me is it's absolutely silly. It's just that Gervonta Davis is not, he's not represented. He doesn't fight for ESPN. He doesn't fight for DAZN. He doesn't fight for Top Rank. He doesn't fight for Golden Boy. And Floyd Mayweather Jr. was always kind of a media bad boy. So they just continued the conversation on, or that treatment on, to his protege, Gervonta Tank Davis. Now, that's not to say Gervonta Tank Davis doesn't have things he needs to do in his career. I definitely know that he has more than he needs to accomplish. For example, Gervonta Davis is not a 140-pound fighter. Now, that's one of the reasons why I give him a lot of credit for this fight over Mario Barrios. It's because Mario Barrios, you could just tell when they walked in the ring how much bigger Barrios was than Gervonta Davis. That's a major size disadvantage he was under. And he had to deal with a guy that was really trying to beat him on the end of a jab with the jab and a straight right hand, but eventually figured it out and just showed you what kind of talent he is. However, he's not, from a stature standpoint, he's not a 140-pounder. I wouldn't have him going to fight guys like Josh Taylor, or I wouldn't even have him fight guys like Regis Prograis, even though I think he obviously has a chance to beat both of those guys. He is somebody, though, at lightweight that should fight a guy like Devin Haney, should fight Vasily Lomachenko, should fight Teofimo Lopez. Those guys are the ones that are right there in this weight class and absolutely good fights for him to take. Lomachenko however, I think Lomachenko is probably the only competitive fight that he'll have down there, especially after seeing Lomachenko beat Nakatani the way that he beat Nakatani. That just showed you when Vasily Lomachenko wants to step on the gas for the whole fight, that's a lot of problems for people. But at the same time, I don't know about what he would do with Gervonta Davis, because Gervonta Davis's footwork, his speed and everything, and the fact that he's also southpaw, I think it'd be a really great competitive fight. However, I will say that although I have Gervonta Davis in my top, inside my top 10 pound for pound, I would say that there's definitely a lot more work that he could do, specifically in the lightweight division. But all in all, I compliment Mike Tyson for saying that. I agree with him, and I think that Tank is the most underrated fighter in boxing, because there is nobody else with that level of skill, that with the pedigree that he now has, which are titles in 3 different divisions. Now, I know that they're not major championship belts, at least the ones at 130 and the one at 140, but that ain't never stopped any of these guys over there at ESPN from giving people credit, like they gave Gennady Golovkin when Gennady Golovkin had the WBA regular belt, and they gave him credit for like 11 title defenses of that thing, which is a secondary belt, when they were claiming that he was beating Bernard Hopkins' record of, I think it was 22 title defenses, 21 or 22 title defenses of the middleweight title. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.